All right, Bruce. So I'm recording. And how does that make sense? Number whatever it is, I think 11. So anyway, I think we decided yesterday we were going to talk about, you know, our good friends at cable news channels and what to do about it. I don't know about you, but I try to avoid them, but then I get sucked into it, going from one to another, and then I feel like after I've done that, I've eaten like 4 bags of potato chips and feel miserable afterwards.
You forgot the liter of soda that went with those chips to make you feel.
Yeah, I should have a liter of soda that goes with those chips as well. So anyway, I think it's long gone related to this whole notion of some sort of balance, and I don't know how we get this balance, but anyway, I'll throw it to you first in terms of some of your thoughts and reactions, since you always have some very insightful and good ones, and then we can throw a couple of ideas around.
Yeah, balance, fact, news versus opinion. What makes me crazy about this stuff is it's not about news.
No.
They claim they're news programs, but they're opinion programs.
Yeah.
And I really feel like they encourage people to spread the word, but the word isn't factually accurate, and it doesn't have to be when it's someone's opinion.
Right.
So to me, they should have some glaring button that says opinion, opinion, opinion versus news.
Right.
And some frame when it's actually news. Something that's visual.
Yeah.
That is unmissable, that allows us, we all embellish. I'm not going to criticize for a little exaggeration in marshaling some facts, but I will criticize in marshaling and using facts and using them to spin, to tell a tale that is factually inaccurate, but is your opinion and you want to get that across.
Right. Right. Well, there's always sort of the money trail too. So these guys are all being fed pretty much by sponsors. So what do you think, any role related to sponsors in doing this? I mean, it's very easy to point the fingers at these pundits, but you always got to follow the money trail. They wouldn't be
right
unless there was a ton of cash coming through to them. And that pipeline seems to be what we affectionately refer to as Madison Avenue, that we have been a part of and still are.
Yeah, listen, this is a policy issue, and I don't think in our form of capitalism, corporations should be they should be good corporate citizens. So if being a good corporate citizen says to you, okay, let's take our money off the table for 60 days and send a message that they've got to do something, that works for me, because it'd destroy a quarter for these companies. It would destroy a quarter given, the money that these guys generate. I don't know how much Fox Cable News relates to Fox. I mean, remember, this is not a new story. William Randolph Hearst was playing this game a long time ago. And there were others in, the old New York Globe. I don't even know who, Joseph Pulitzer or whoever owned it at the time. I mean, this is not a new game.
No.
Where very wealthy people are trying to shove their point of view down other people's throats to get them to act, in many cases, not in their best self-interest. This is not new.
Yeah.
But I do think as marketers, we have a responsibility at least to understand what we're feeding.
Well, they went, the whole world went crazy back in 1970 and before about cigarettes, and they still are, in terms of you got to put warnings out. There's all big bad things about your health and blah, 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 blah. And sometimes, and that was an obvious situation, but sometimes these things are a little bit more insidious in terms of what effect are they really having on people. There was a time where there was a lot more balance. We were talking yesterday, there used to be this Fairness Act, but that was also sort of a much simpler time. And then you go down that path of government legislation, which is tough or whatever. But I was thinking that, yeah, no, and you got to be careful when you give too much power reins to one particular area, because at some point it's going to get abused. There's no doubt about it. And companies themselves also have their own biases in terms of where they're going to lean. That's why I look at cable news as a category. I consider it CNN, MSNBC, and Fox, because they are all pretty much equally guilty in terms of how they're going about and looking at what they see as the truth. It's a cup of water, and to be the most simplistic terms, it's either half full or half empty. And both of those statements are correct. And they're playing to audiences based upon, where their power structure is coming from. So kind of going back to these advertisers, I keep thinking this seems to be kind of simple. I remember a number of years ago, and I think this was kind of a failed initiative, so maybe it's not a good example. The ANA had, I think it was a family values council, something like that, where advertisers were getting together to try to get the networks to really focus in on a lot more family-oriented programming. There was a lot of concern.
And adjust standard practice.
Yeah, and do all that. And I think that kind of fizzled, and for a variety of reasons. But this stuff's not going to go away, but at least we could give people some tools to help them think through this a little better. So if there was, at least you said, kind of put a thing up there about opinion. If I was one of these advertisers right now, I think I would want to say, at least have a 3-tiered system that all you guys have to stand up for. No one's going to tell you. It's too tempting for you to not run to your cameras with whatever the latest gossip is of the moment. But at least it should be code red. This is unvetted. We don't know what the absolute truth is on all this stuff, but we want to give you this information because for some stupid reason you need to know before anybody else. Then maybe there's a code yellow that actually is halfway there. Maybe there's a code green where this meets our standards, or maybe a code gold, which meets our standards of this particular network. And that way you're not censoring anybody. You can promote all this stuff. People could even sponsor code red if they wanted to, but at least so you know that if you're jumping on Facebook with all these quick stories or whatever, because you have to be the first one to be out there to tell everybody that somebody just died or somebody just did something ridiculous, then at least you will know at what point of this spectrum of vetting, if there is any vetting, this thing is in.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. That's a fairly simple solution. It's either news, it's opinion, it's unvetted, it's vetted. Okay. You got your grid. You've got it done. How hard is this? I don't understand. Why can't we as a public make minimal demands? I mean, media has a responsibility, especially the news media.
Right.
And I think that we need to say as a public that it's not too hard to live up to it.
Right.
It really isn't. And it's, in a healthy democracy, it's an important tool. It's recognized. Freedom of speech is recognized.
Yeah.
Not freedom of money, it's freedom of speech. Right. Somewhere money and speech and that whole one are the same got confused. Yeah. But
good. Absolutely. Well, what I'm going to do? I'm going to draft a letter. I'm going to share it with you sometime next week to, I think, the head of the ANA, and remind them of what was going on with the family values. And here's an idea for you.
And while we're at it, include the head of the FCC.
And keep the head of the FTC as well. I mean, does that make sense?
Makes sense. Let's do it, baby.
All right, man. Then we'll be back to you, boys and girls.
Have a good one.
Yeah, bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye.